Hey guys, this is the completionist, and this is my very first episode, and the game I would like to talk to you about is Odin Sphere. Odin Sphere is a game that was released in 2007 for the PS2 and is considered the spiritual successor to the game Princess Crown, which was a Japanese game for the Sega Saturn. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to fully complete Odin Sphere and get 100%. So let's get to it, shall we?
Here is Odin Sphere. As I'm getting ready to load up my file, one of the first things you'll see is that I've obviously put a lot of time into the game. I've put in roughly a little over 74 hours into it. But one other thing I'd like to bring to your attention is the stars that are located in the load screen. Basically, you get one illuminated star for each storybook that you finish, and since there are 5 characters, the first 5 stars are very easy to fill up. The 6th star you get if you get the good ending of the game, and the 7th star you get is if you get all story elements of the game and you unlock the last final scene. So guys, I pretty much have the game completed. So this is the startup screen, and you see 7 books across the floor. So obviously the first storyline is Valkyrie, and then we move on to the Puka Prince, and then we move on to Fairyland, and then we move on to the Black Sword, and then we move on to Fate. And then we move on to Armageddon, which is the final aspect of the game in which each character fights a different boss. And then we move on to the Wheel of Fate, which is the book that shows the good ending of the game. And then one thing I would like to show you is I'm picking up the cat Socrates, and if you bring him to the chair, you get to see the story archive of the game. And as we see with the story archive, we see 5 columns. Basically, one column is for each character. As you see the 0-1 moving down through the list, this is actually Gwendolyn's storyline. And then it pretty much works the same way for the rest of the characters. As we're now down through the final set of the story elements, is that we're looking at the Wheel of Fate, and basically what happens as the game ends once you actually do get the good ending. And then you see the false end, which is the bad ending, and the epilogue of the Armageddon ending the saga. So guys, one of the things I'm going to be doing is I want to start showing you some of the basic gameplay elements of the game, and we're picking up Gwendolyn's storybook right now. I'm about halfway through it, and I just did it just for some item collection. But from a completionist point of view, one thing you have to watch out for, especially completing this game, is the Puka Village. So here we are in the Puka Village, and I'm going directly for the restaurant. One of the things as you're playing the game that you'll eventually pick up is different recipes to cook different foods, and these foods require different ingredients, but once a meal is prepared, they can actually refill your HP and actually build up your experience as well. But one of the things you have to be careful, especially in the restaurant, is even if you think you've collected all the recipes, when you go into the restaurant, especially playing the game for the first time, you're going to notice a few spaces in between different recipes, and you kind of think to yourself, well, I've just collected all the recipes. How do I get the other ones? Well, the thing is that you're obviously... there are some existing recipes you have to cook a certain number of times that will unlock the other recipes. For example, the creamy stew. If you look at the recipe just below the creamy stew, it says the Turney creamy stew. And the way you get access to that recipe is that you have to cook the creamy stew anywhere from 4 to 6 times. So if for any apparent reason, if you see a space below an already existing recipe, cook that original recipe 4 to 6 times, and you should get access to the new recipe. Pretty much complete that until there are no spaces left and therefore you'll have pretty much all the recipes to complete the game. So guys, when we're in one of the stages fighting different enemies, one thing that you should definitely take advantage of is when you're fighting different enemies, it is best to try to fight them as fast as you can while trying to take as less damage as humanly possible. Because at the end of the stage, if you end up getting an S rank after you defeat the enemies, you actually maximize the amount of items you can actually get per stage. So guys, one other thing I'd like to bring up is as you're playing the game, bring up the text menu, because the text menu gives you a list of scrolls that you're going to pick up throughout the game, and this is a good indication of how much you've collected, and to make sure you've obtained every scroll for each section. So as I quickly go through the prophecies and the alchemy mixes for the text menu, you can see that the other categories are notes, and the kitchen recipes, and the cafe recipes. So these two menus will pretty much give you an idea of the recipes you need to obtain. Obviously, you can get the majority of them by completing the levels of each area you go into, but as I said before, the rest of the recipes you'll have to cook certain recipes a certain number of times to unlock them. So guys, the next menu I'd like to bring up is the map menu. Once you collect the map scroll in each level that you play in, you could see the overall view of the map. As you see me going around the map, if you take the more western route, you'll eventually reach the boss of that level. But taking the fastest route is not necessarily the best thing. I highly recommend that you visit each level for each world that you fight in, because you never know what you could pick up. You could pick up a recipe, you could pick up anything. So for each area that you visit, go everywhere. Absolutely. So guys, that pretty much takes care of some of the things you'll have to watch out for in terms of your playthrough. But the majority of your grinding in order to complete this game will be spent during Armageddon. As you see here in the story archive, in order to get the good ending during Armageddon, you have to match the proper character with the proper boss. But if for any apparent reason, if you even match one wrong character with the wrong boss, you'll automatically get the bad ending. Even if you do get the bad ending and the good ending, you will have to play through the Armageddon book several times. The reason for this is that if you match certain characters with a certain boss, you'll unlock an extra scene between the interaction of that character and that boss. You need to do this to fill out the story archive and achieve the final bonus scene of the game. For example, when you fight Onks, the king of the Fire Kingdom, the correct character to fight Onks with is Mercedes the Fairy Princess. But if you fight Onks with Oswald the Black Knight or Gwendolyn the Valkyrie, you will get an extra scene before and after the boss fight. The same will hold through for fights against the Darkova and the King of the Netherworld. So guys, that pretty much covers part 1 of how to complete Odin Sphere. Stay tuned for part 2, in which we will look at the boss fights of the Armageddon book a little more closely. Take care.